Thank you very much for the kind words. Welcome. I'm grateful to be here. I've been in London many times, but I've never been to this very beautiful part of the country. So I'm delighted to be with you today. And I feel honored to be part of this 2014 Clear Voices Festival of Theology. When I told my friends that I was coming to London, they were like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to a festival of theology. Wait a minute, what? What festival? Festival of theology. You're not a theologian. How comes you are going there? And I said, I am by baptism and because God created us all as theologians. And that's why we have the Bible as a reflection of our lives. So welcome to all of you theologians. I am going to share my reflections with you based on two things. My upbringing in the village, what I experienced when I was a young girl, and also the enormous wealth of experience I have gained working in Caritas, which is the social pastoral arm of the Catholic Church, with women in Kenya for over 10 years. Women of all kinds, very educated women, women politicians, single parents who are dejected in their communities, women who have attempted to commit suicide, and women who are really hardworking, who really I always mirror myself with. I always say, I wish I could be such a strong woman, because sometimes they are there, they do not have any resources, they have nothing, but they have so positive attitude towards life. I have worked in Caritas for over 25 years. After I worked with Caritas Kenya with women, I went to Caritas Africa, which is composed of 45 members south of Sahara, and I work with social development of the peoples, and particularly animating the members, the 45 members of Caritas Africa in their social pastoral work. I've been asked to share with you a verse which I really like, John 10:10, I have come so that they may have life and have it to the full. We have an African Bible, which I really like. The version of the African Bible of the same verse is that I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. And I like the abundance part of it. And I like the life part of it. Because in most cases, we find that the Bible reflects on women negatively. Because sometimes it's written from a culture where women are relegated to marginal arena in life. They are relegated to subordinate positions. They are seen as subservient to men. But the Bible tells me, no, that's not the will of God. The will of God is that we have life and have it in full and in abundance. If you go to any church in Africa today, most of you maybe have been there, you'll notice that the majority of the faithfuls are women. But if you look closely, you also find that the majority of those in leadership positions are men. And if you are bold enough to ask in the church, why do we have this position? Why do we have men in leadership and women as faithfuls? Both the men and women will give you very good examples. They will say that it is the will of God. Many faithfuls will see the situation as normal and as a will of God. They will quote several Bible verses to prove that the role of men and women are divinely ascribed. And I'm sure if today you go to the Bible and you try to look at it, you get those verses. There go to the teachings of St. Paul. You get all these very well outlined. So they are right. Maybe we need to animate them to see the different thing. We see things according to how we are socialized. I am privileged in that I went to a school and I've been able to participate in Caritas, and therefore as a woman, I see things differently. Many of my colleague women in Africa will argue with me to death, and they'll tell me, no, that is the way it is supposed to be. And that's why you find that in most cases, even when you go to small Christian communities, they will vote the man as the leader of that small Christian community. So I want to say that these verses are humanly interpreted to portray a divine authority of men over women. This perceived, I want to underline the word perceived superiority of men over women is reinforced by cultural norms and values. And this has perpetuated marginalization and exclusion of women in leadership positions in the church and also in all the spheres of life. And I guess I don't know whether you can associate with that from Africa. I don't know whether there are marginalization of women in this country of abundance. But in Africa, it is rampant. John 10:10 sets the tone of our discussion today. Jesus affirmed his mission on earth and practiced it in everyday teaching and actions. Apart from our own interpretation, Jesus fought all the cultural norms. He refused to be cocooned in cultural perceptions of men and women. His mission was and remained open to all humanity in equal measures. His mission on earth was to give life and give it in full in all aspects of human life: physical, psychological, spiritual, and emotional, and also material. I'll tell you why material is very important in my country and in my continent in Africa. So what do I do? Do I stay there and empathize and say, oh, now what do I do? No. As a woman, when I read the Bible, I see Jesus constantly treating women with dignity, as opposed to the customs of the time. He refused, and I have put the word refused, to adhere to the cultural norms of the time, the Jewish culture, that treated women as subservient to men. How did he do that? He ignored ritual of impurity laws. For example, by curing the man who suffered from menstrual bleeding for 12 years, she was cast. And everybody was looking at, she was unclean, and nobody wanted to be near her. Even her, she believed she was unclean, because you remember, in the Bible, she sneaked and then touched the cloak of Jesus. And Jesus turned and said, somebody has touched me. Who is that? And healed her. Your faith has healed you. And that is one of the virtues of women. Even when things are thick and thin, we always find a way of sneaking and getting what we want. Jesus did not rebuke her. He talked to a foreign Samaritan woman at the well. Did you read that story? Did you know that they were marveled when they came and found Jesus talking to a woman? And furthermore, and a Samaritan woman? And maybe they had heard the rumors that this woman is a sinner. In my culture, as I will tell you, we go to the river together as women. If you are going alone, definitely there is a problem. And this Samaritan woman was in the river at the wrong time even. We go to the river in the morning or in the evening when it is not very hot. She was there at midday. And then Jesus was there sitting with her and discussing, and they engaged in a very deep theological conversation. Give me water. Why should I give you water? I'll give you the water of life. Where will you get the water of life if you don't have something to draw the water? We don't share utensils. And she says, no, the water I'll give you, you will never thirst again. Okay, please. As a woman, I always go for this water. Give me that water that I don't have to come here. And that's the time Jesus asked her again about her life. And there, a point of conversion. That she became a disciple. Apart from that, we don't hear what happens to her, but she went preaching. But what about the real disciples? They were marveled. Have you ever been marveled? Why? We have such inequalities. And by the way, did you hear the word marveled? Let me tell you something that I forgot to tell you. In my culture, we don't have an L. So if I say the children are running, don't think they're in class, in the field running. No, they're in the class learning. Do you understand? We don't have an L, we pronounce an R. So if I say any word that does not make sense, and it has an R or it sounds an R, just take out the R and put an L. It might make some sense. Jesus talked to both women and men. He taught both. He taught Mary. You remember the story of Mary and Martha? Martha was very busy doing the roles of women in the kitchen. And Mary was seated listening to the teachings. And Jesus, when Martha came complaining, Jesus said she has chosen the right place. That she doesn't have to go to the kitchen. She's doing right to be here and to hear the teaching. His parables cited both men and women. And I like the parable of the 100 sheep. He gives an example of a man. That if a man found one lost sheep, he will leave all the others and go to look for that one lost sheep. And then he says, a woman who has lost one coin, will sweep and get the friends. Both of them will delight in finding the lost coin and the lost sheep. It's the same thing. So Jesus was also teaching in a language that both men and women would understand. Pope John Paul, in the post-synodal apostolic exhortation, whatever it is, in Africa, Ecclesia in Africa, he sustained this teaching of equality between men and women and said, having both been created in the image of God, man and woman, although different, are essentially equal from the point of view of their humanity and are endowed with intelligence, very important, equal personal dignity, with all freedom. That's the teaching of the church, Pope John Paul II. Let me give you my personal journey. My personal story shapes my quest for equality between men and women. I grew up in a rural village about 120 kilometers north of Nairobi. Those who've been there, Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya. and near the slopes of Mount Kenya. I attended a rural primary school where I had to walk 8 kilometers daily to school and back. After school, after 8 kilometers, I would trek for another 2 kilometers to the river to fetch water. If I didn't have a pen or a pencil, I would again walk for 6 kilometers to the nearest shopping center. In the village, we had only one small shop. It's not even a shop because it was made out, it's not a shop as you know, but it's just a shed outside where you hardly got anything. It was owned by 2 women, but because people are not buying things there, and then they didn't have maybe enough cash to stock the shops, most of the shelves were empty. So everybody in the village opted to trek to the bigger shopping center where goods were cheaper and more readily available. The bigger shopping center was about 5 kilometers from my town. In my village, everyone almost knew everybody in the village. Every woman of my mother's age was my mother. Girls of my age were my sisters. We walked together to school. We walked together to collect firewood. We trekked to the river together and wait for each other so that you fill your jerrycans, and then we help each other load the jerrycan on each other's back. And occasionally, we would also fetch, in addition to the water we have fetched for our homesteads, we would also fetch and collect firewood for the sick and elderly, and also the mothers who have given birth. We lived a communal life with distinct roles for girls and boys. The role of boys was to graze the cows, and then take the cows to the river to water them. They also were grazing in groups. The problem is, if they came to the river, when we were drawing the water, then they would tell us, you move, we have to feed the cows, and then they spoil the river, and then it is difficult for us to get the water again. So a strategy we used to do is again to go in the morning. So the bullying of men to women started quite early in my village. However, it is this spirit of communal togetherness and caring that today shapes the real meaning of John 10:10. Village life did not have the plenty that I experience in this world. I waited at the railway station at Paddington for about 1.5 hours because I wanted to get the cheaper ticket yesterday. And I was amazed at the wastage you people have. You get somebody taking sandwich, before it is even quarter, throws it. I counted about 5 people throwing sandwiches that they had bought. You see somebody getting a drink, it's halfway, and it's kept and it's left. As you are going to the train, you see people throwing things. At the airport, I saw people throwing away the things you sleep on, what do you call the carved, I don't know what they are called, you know? Because after finishing, you throw them away. And I'm like, oh God, this is a real comfort for a baby who is sleeping on hard stone. I wish I could correct them and go to give all these mothers, you know. So I'm saying that the community, the village that I grew in, we didn't have the plenty, but we were connected as a community. We cared for each other. We were in solidarity with each other in times of joy and in times of sorrow. That's one part of my history. The other part of my experience, And that has shaped my passion and dedication to work for equality between men and women, was that hungry a week could end before witnessing battering of women and girls in my village. Women screaming at night, girls screaming at night. In many occasions, some of my friends would take refuge in our house as they ran away from domestic violence in their families, particularly directed to their mothers and women folk of their homesteads. I was always wondering why women were continuously battered and verbally abused. I did not experience this in my family. Maybe because my father was not staying with us. My father was one of those railway workers and was in Mombasa and were in the village and just occasionally used to come home for a very short time. It is this childhood experience in my village that gives me the impetus to continue to advocate for the advancement of women and equality between women and men. Here, I see equality in terms of equal opportunities for both men and women in realizing the full potential as advocated by, in John 10:10. So John 10:10 raised a background of understanding of spirituality of equality between men and women. Spirituality is all about living a full of meaning, having some good connections at family level, and we are looking for connections, at workplace, with the friends, and with other God's creation, and particularly with also God. Living a full life is creating a common good for all humanity. This call for communion with each other, building and promoting each other, and fostering the welfare of each other as equals. When we talk of spirituality of equals, this demands us to work together towards addressing the root causes of inequality, advocating for an end to harmful practices that discriminate against women and any other human being. I want to really thank all of you who have really been committed in working towards equality of women and men in other parts of the country in Africa. I was delighted when I came that the young ladies have been running and working for women. Thank you very much and congratulations for doing that. That's really creating life so that we may all live in abundance. I want to look at equality in the African culture. When we talk about African culture, it is impossible to make a general statement that would be true of all countries in Africa because Africa is enormous. We don't know each other. I get always amused when I go to a foreign country, like one time I was in Australia, we were talking on Renton campaign, and an old lady came and she was looking for me, yearning to greet me, and she came and greeted me and hugged me and said, oh, I'm so grateful. One time I was in your country. I was so happy. I said, where were you? I was in Cote d'Ivoire. And there's this woman called Philomena. Her name was Philomena. Do you know her? And I was like, it's on the other side of the continent. So what I'm saying is that we are diverse. Cultural norms in Africa dictate to a large extent the relationship between men and women. Culture creates the basis of how people relate to each other on a day-to-day activities. Within the African culture, baby boys are always prioritized. They are given priorities in everything. In my Kikuyu culture, discrimination of women starts at birth. When a child is born, the boys get 5 harurination. You know what are harurination? Those are harurination. So I've made one, but it's normally prolonged when it's a baby. So they get 5 of that. So they get that one and another one. If it's a girl child, they get 4. So that's the start of saying what the relationship of boys and girls. The girl child becomes already commoditized because the 4 harurination signify that although the homestead doesn't have a homestead, doesn't have wealth, they will get more wealth through bride price. This entails paying of a bride price in form of cows and other family goodies to the girl's family during marriage. This practice reinforces inequality between men and women, and in most cases justify domestic violence, because men feel, if I have paid bride price, then I owe you. In fact, in my culture, the language is, I bought you. So if you bought something, it's at your prerogative to use it the way you want and do it. So we find that this perpetuates violence against women and marginalization of women. Negative social attitude and cultural practices are a hindrance to female education. These take the form of preferential option for the boys. And when in a family, it's very difficult to have both boys and girls being educated. It's normally the girl who is pulled out of school to go and supplement the income of the family by being employed as a house help. All is sold out or forced to marry so that they may get the bride price as also a source of wealth for the family. Poverty in Africa also affects women and men differently. Culturally, we find that women do not own property. Right now, we are in a case with family members, with my family, because my brother thinks I should not inherit from my father, the land of my father. And we are saying no. We have a new constitution that allows that. But I realize that the whole clan is against any woman inheriting, including my mother. One day, just before I came, she called me and told me, do you know, it is a curse for you to inherit. You will be sick, my daughter, if I leave you to this land. She's convinced, because that is the cultural teaching. So now, me, I'm educated, I have my own job. What about other women who have nothing and they can't inherit from their fathers? That tells them they will remain poor and poverty continues. Division of labor, again, is an issue that also perpetuates discrimination against women. Women's role are seen to be in the private sphere, in the kitchen, and not in the public sphere where they are remunerated. And therefore, even at workplaces, we start finding that women are given, even if they are equal jobs, the jobs of men are valued more than that of women. In some cases, they are also remunerated less than men. And in most cases in school, girls are socialized to take courses or careers that are in line with the domestic work. Like a boy would be socialized to do medicine, and a girl would be socialized to do nursing. Because nursing is part of the roles of women. You also realize that the roles of women are very repetitive. Today you cook, tomorrow you cook, the other day you cook. It's a repetition, boring. Huh? You do the same thing, you do the same thing, and then you are also expected to produce for the family or to work, and also to be part of the community, to assist in community celebrations. It's the women who will also do these works at community level. what are we doing at the church and with you? As Caritas and CAFOD, which I'm sure you all know, we have been in partnership working to ensure that we advocate for a more just society, a more just world where equality is the norm. We have been working that many times. And I believe we've been working in CAFOD because of you, your personal contribution. The small thing you give, maybe £1, you may think it's very small, but when it comes to Africa, it gives a woman wealth. It means saving a baby who would have been given birth in the bush or at home because she doesn't have a maternity in the village. And it's set up with this partnership. When we look at equality in the contemporary world, what do we hear? What are the news that we hear? Let me give you some of the news that I got within the last 1 month. A Sudanese pregnant woman, Miriam Ibrahim, was sentenced to death for marrying a Christian man. She was pregnant. She gave birth 2 weeks ago. And this was because his brother said that she's against Islam law. And when he was asked again, he said he was happy because the woman was given a death sentence with rashes. How do you also beat somebody whom you are going to kill? Sometimes I don't understand these laws. I'm sure you have heard that story. It is not new. The amazing part, which is very beautiful, is that with the solidarity of people from all over the world, supporting and robbing that she should not be killed, she should be released. Today she has been released. But she was caught at the airport when she was leaving. Little is known what is happening. But that has increased pressure from all over that release Miriam. And lawyers, very qualified lawyers, are thrown in from all corners trying to support her. Thank you for that solidarity. In Pakistan, Shaba Moskud, 18-year-old girl, was shot and thrown in a canal by members of her own family because she had married a man of her own choice. She survived the death and lives to tell the story. You are also aware of that story. In India, 2 cousins aged 12 and 14 were raped and hanged on a tree by their rapists. You also heard that story. The sad part of that story is that the head of a regional party stated that he was opposed to the death penalty for the rapists because boys commit mistakes and should not be hanged for rape. Okay, I'm not saying they should be hanged, but that's not a reason that boys commit mistakes. I mean, let's see, what is the rationale behind that? We are all aware of the sad cases that has happened. Over 200 Nigerian girls were abducted by Boko Haram, and today, have they been rescued? No. Before I came, and this is my country, this is a paper on 25th June. This was one of the features, you know, that who will come to our rescue. Women who are walking for water as early as 5 a.m. are raped on the way. They get sick. They queue because there's only one source of water, a borehole. They queue up to midday. Sometimes because they have other chores to do, they choose to ask the vendors who are men to bring the water. And because they don't have enough money, they have to give sexual favors in return. This is all this. It's here. I'll leave this one to the students so that you can see the good work you are doing. This is on 25th of June. So what do we do? These are the stories. Many more headlines tell us that people of faith, you and me, we are being called to work towards healing the world. This is based on our conviction that life is sacred, that every individual has an equal and full value as created in the God's image, and that every individual is loved through and through and has been created to live life and live it in full. So what are we doing as Caritas? What are we doing as Scaffold? The key mission of the church in Africa is to witness the universality of the church in her service to the poor by living the gospel values and putting them into practice. In this mission, faithfuls like me and you are major actors in creating this just world where equality is achieved. Caritas' work is guided by the social teachings of the church. And this include, which we practice and live, enhancing and upholding the dignity of the human person at all time. We work respecting the dignity of people we work with and ensuring that both men and women are active participants and equally benefit from their own development without any form of discrimination. Caritas activities aims to enhance the empowerment of the poor and marginalized, and to transform society into a civilization of love as promoters and facilitators of solidarity, peace, and social justice and equality between men and women. Caritas works in solidarity with the people we serve. Scaffold has never, as an institution, has never come to Africa and implemented programs. And this is happening with some development agencies. They come, in the community, they see there is no toilet, they start digging toilets for the community, but without understanding what are the cultural realities of that community. So once they are gone, some community, I know one community that men and women could not go in one toilet because it was a disgrace. How do you go to do the things children do in the same place? So after some time they came and they found the toilets are still there, nobody is using them. But that's not our approach as Caritas, as Scaffold. Scaffold is Caritas England and Wales. We work in solidarity with the people we serve and with a common vision of establishing a world of equal human beings. We strive to honor the principle of subsidiarity. What does that mean? We don't make decisions where decisions and ownership has always been devolved to the communities. The communities know best what suits them and what is better for them. And therefore, we always believe in the spirit of all the decisions affecting communities are devolved and made at the community level. Caritas is committed to development processes that prioritize active participation of both women and men. And this becomes the foundation of flourishing communities. If you work in development and you are not involving everybody, and when I talk of women and men, I'm also including boys and girls, then we find that you leave a very important group that even after you are gone, you have not really caused any development because some people have been left out. Caritas enhances sustainability and self-sufficiency of our activities and consciously reduce unhealthy dependency. So our work is enabling, not giving, not aid, not just giving aid. It's enabling, journeying together, strengthening each other, learning from each other, and strengthening the autonomy of communities and building their capacities as well as them building our capacities. Capacity is not necessarily from 1 to another. It's not capacity. Even if it's not a mutual capacity where both people in partnership learn, then there's something wrong with that. Promoting flourishing, therefore, means moving away from short-term snap projects to long-term projects that promote flourishing. I am grateful to say here that CAFOD is one organization in Africa that has moved now from snap projects, women projects, water, and then we go. No, it's shifting from the concept of project to concept of programs. Programs mean we are engaged in long term, we understand each other, we evaluate the growth together, and we share the fruits together. We need to address the holistic needs of communities if we have to achieve flourishing communities. The issue of equality also needs to be addressed, as flourishing cannot be achieved when half of the humanity is marginalized, and hence promoting what I call equality for human flourishing. It's not just promoting equality for the sake of equality. We want to promote equality for something, to have flourishing, to have life in abundance, where every human dignity is respected. Therefore, to achieve flourishing, we need a concerted effort. It's not one person's effort. It's an effort of all of us in fighting all forms of discrimination, both covert and overt. Sometimes we really concentrate on overt discrimination and forget to look at ourselves, how we are covertly also perpetuating inequality. So we need to be conscious about our actions. Yes. Why? Because together we are more. Caritas Africa undertakes to promote peace, justice, and equality in cooperation with other Caritas members like CAFOD by recognizing, highlighting, and acting against injustices that create repression and power imbalances in the church and in the society. We do this together by being part of a theological tradition that promotes justice and equality. Theology legitimizes both cultural expressions and religious norms surrounding issues of justice and equality. We ensure that as Caritas and CAFOD, our decisions are preceded by joint analysis of needs. No one makes a decision without the other. And we do this with the people that we serve, the communities. The implications of our decisions are also analyzed, because sometimes we make innocent decisions without analyzing them. How are they going to affect men and women? We operate on principles of equal partnership, even at our level, even at the level of Caritas Africa and CAFOD. I've been a CAFOD partner for all the years I've worked in Caritas, not necessarily in terms of getting money. We are always in a process of consultation, journeying together, and letting each other grow. We are opposed to any form of discrimination and marginalization that humanizes people. For example, domestic violence, armed conflict. In Africa, armed conflict has another effect on women. You've read about Congo, or you've heard about Congo, how women are raped. So rape becomes a weapon of war. Can you imagine? Women are raped so that the communities can really be aggravated that you have raped our women. We are against harmful cultural practices. For example, cultural practices that marry off young girls, cultural practices that ensure that women must go a funny cultural right, like female genital mutilation, so that once you have undergone that right, then you are a woman, you are sold off, you can marry and go to make a home. We promote equality in order to abolish poverty and attain economic justice. Lack of equality is a great cause of poverty in Africa. We recognize women and men as religious, social, economic, political, and cultural actors and leaders in faith communities and societies where we strive to create flourishing communities. In conclusion, I take this opportunity to thank you for being in partnership with us over the years, all of you. Those who are here, those who are not here in the dioceses, you have always been very supportive of equality in Africa. On behalf of all the women in Africa, I say thank you very much. All of you in one way or another have generously contributed to works of CAFOD, either as volunteers, not necessarily even as money. You are enabling, so thank you very much. Thank you. Through your solidarity, CAFOD is able to journey with us in promoting human flourishing by creating a just one world. I like that. Just one world. It is just one world. There are not two worlds, and it is just that there is justice in that one world. Thank you very much. Let me add this speech by giving you a quote in Africa. That in this journey of creating flourishing communities, if you want to walk fast, each one of you, well, I advise you to walk alone. But if you want to walk far, please let us walk together. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join with me once again in applauding Margaret Mwaniki. I enjoyed hearing about your work and found that to be very, very inspiring. So I hope everyone else found it just as inspiring. So thank you very much. Please remember to take your liturgy books with you.
Excuse me, is there time for questions?
Yeah?
Can I ask a question? All right, yeah. I was really inspired by what you said, and what I'm interested to know is how you've managed to lift yourself out of those cultural norms, as opposed to many women who haven't been able to do that. I'd like to know a little bit more about your story as to how you've done that. I think stories are really helpful.
Yeah. So you want to know how I've been able to lift myself beyond the cultural norms and the stereotypes about women. First of all, I gave my story. I was brought up in the village. That's point number one. Point number two, it was my mother. She was one of a very hard-working woman who actually, despite my father working with the railways, and despite him having very few, because he was a casual laborer, my mother always told us we have to work hard if we don't want to be useless in the community. And for sure, I worked hard. That's point number one. Point number two is about my upbringing in the church. I grew in the church, and there was this religious nun from Italy, Sister Carumera, who realized that I have some potential and decided to pay half what I was in a public school. So Sister Carumera, in a school held by the missionaries, sponsored me to be in the Catholic institution, where the teaching was different from what we were getting in the primary school. Then I was released from the burden in the village of getting water and trekking, all that. So from class 6, I went to a boarding school supported by sister. We used to call them benefactors. Now I understand benefactors are Caritas people like you. So that really shaped who I am. So I went to a good school through a benefactor, through the church, Sister Karumera. And then I also were able to participate a lot in the church. That's where I met my husband, who was also a youth leader like these young ladies. And then we used to discuss a lot in youth seminars about relationships. So I was one of the very fortunate women who've been nurtured in relationships, who've been shown the other part of the world. Unfortunately, many women in Africa do not have that opportunity. Maybe if I was left to study in a public school, that's the only one my father would afford, I would not have been like that. Then my participation in the church. Throughout, I have been in the church. When I graduated, I went to teach in a secondary school. But after 10 years, I found, no, 9 years, I found, no, this is not my calling. In my diocese, they needed a women coordinator. And my bishop asked me if I could help them on a volunteer basis. I did that for 1 year, and then I got into full-time employment. So that way, I've been accorded opportunities that were always pushing me up, 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 up. And this is the opportunity that many people do not have. Thanks God to you, because it's people like you, I believe today, because I understand who benefactors were, that I am what I am. So I am a living example of the work and this solidarity we are doing together. Yeah.
Margaret, is there any work being done with the men? Because it seems to me that there seems almost as much need to be working with the men to change their mentality.
Yes. Yes. The development practices that we have been doing for so long was basically trying to uplift the woman from this level to this level. But we found that that is not working. Actually, programs of women in development, they are important, but it is good to change this element of men. And therefore, most of the programs have changed from a focus of women alone to a focus of both men and women. That's why in my talk I kept on saying men and women. But that doesn't mean that we forget women, because we need to create an equal playing level. How do you talk with a man who has all the preferences for education, and we have the girl child who is being pulled out to go and become house help? We need to help these people so that they can also have equal opportunities with the men. So yes, in Caritas we are focusing on both men and women. And these days it's even more, because we are seeing a cultural change where the roles that used to be for women and men are also changing because of globalization, enculturation. And before, we never used to see men with earrings. Today you go, all the boys are having earrings. We never used to see men, treating their hairs. Today you go to the saloon, you are looking for a seat because they have all been occupied by men. We never used to have manicure, pedicure for boys. Now they are all there. So all these are times that are asking us to change our development paradigms. We need to look at them. We used to hear of marriages. Today you have had the other marriages. So we need to change. We need to change. If we have to evangelize, we have to evangelize within the realities of the current times. And Pope Francis is very vocal on that. He's a fresh breath in the church, because he's bringing in freshness of reality, Francis, reality, and asking us to read the signs of the times and focus on a new evangelization that responds to the reality of our times. Yes, both men and women. But don't forget women. Yes. Yes.
Can I just say that we also need you, because we too have our problems. We've got a lot to learn from you, and that support, that community, that sisterhood brotherhood in your community. So much of that is lost to us. And many of us are worried about our daughters in our culture as well. So when you talk about cultures changing, we need to listen to you as well and your experience. Thank you for that.
Thank you for according me this opportunity to be here and share and hear also that. We need one another. Together we are more.
You're mentioning cultures, and I was thinking that a lot of the problems you described to us existed in this country 100, 150 years. Brides sold young in their dowries, women and children working in factories and so on. And I would like to ask a question. It seems all over the world, it seems a human thing that men are dominant. And is this because they're physically bigger, usually, and the women are held down by pregnancy and children? So are we fighting against something in creation, or is it something that's wrong in creation? It seems to be everywhere.
First of all, I want to differentiate between our sexual physique as male and female. And I want to look at roles separate that are given to these sexes. In most cases, we find that the roles that cause discrimination are not necessarily biological. I don't see why a man should beat me. In this country, you are not even allowed to beat a child. Is it true? You are not. But that in my culture is there because it has been the traditions for many years. Now it's changing. Culture is dynamic. It's not static. It keeps on changing. It keeps on changing. And one amazing thing about culture is that it's extremely slow. It's extremely slow. You have to repeat the things and do it and be patient, and things change. But if we are working together as men and women, I think we have also rights and responsibilities. We have rights that are specific to women. We have rights that are specific to men. For example, if a woman is pregnant, we need to give her maternity leave. We can't say, because we are talking of this equality, now you can't go for maternity leave. It's equity, it's justice. So equality without justice is also not equality. These days, even men are getting paternity leave, so cultures are changing. Before you talked of paternity leave in organizations and your bosses would ask, what's wrong with you? This man is crazy. He's become a woman. These days is a norm, isn't it? So there's nothing. I refuse to believe that because of my biological status, I am discriminated against, I am marginalized. No. I say it shouldn't be seen as discrimination if I receive my right. If I am justified, I'm given the correct right according to my needs. For example, if you give a bird, I want to give an analogy. If you give a bird water, you can manage to give in a very small container because it will put the beak there and drink. If you give this water to swine with a big thing, I can't drink. But you are saying, okay, it's equality, this is the glass, take and drink water. One of them will be, will go. So equity is also about respecting people in terms of their natural being as male and female. And there comes what we call justice, which is quite different from equality. I don't know whether I've answered your question. Yeah, thank you.
Where can we find out about Caritas? Is there a website?
About Caritas Africa?
How can we find out about it? Information about it?
You can find it on the CAFOG website.
Yes.
which you can do, but you'll find that Caritas is the international arm of CAFOD. We all belong to CAFOD as well.
Yes. CAFOD is Caritas England and Wales, only that they have not written the term CAFOD, because I understand there is a Caritas, Rocco Caritas, which is different. Thank you very much.